Today on the 1012 Big Show, we're recapping all the big storylines from the Big 12's Week 1. That includes Cincinnati and Colorado's close losses, Utah's big win, Baylor's disappointment, and all of the other games that went on this weekend and what they mean for the Big 12 as a whole. Joining me today will be Andy Mitz, Scott McFarland, and Chase A Kiddy, plus a special interview at the end of the show you don't want to miss. So stick around for the 1012.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the 1012, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We're the flagship show, the 1012 Network. Find every podcast in the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we're partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining us for the Big Show. The 1012 Big Show typically drops on Monday to recap the weekend. This is coming out on Tuesday because it's a holiday weekend. I didn't have the ability to record on Sunday night. And no, we're not doing this after the TCU game has come to an end. We're doing it while it's being played because I'm sorry, I can't wait that late to do this. TCU's up 10-7, in case you're curious what time we're recording this. And I say we because new show format, joining me for the first and second segment. No specific team coverage this week. There's just a lot to get to. After week 1, everybody's in action, so we got a lot to talk about. But joining me this week, you know him, you love him, you hate him, you hear him here all the time. It's the host of the Rock Chalk Podcast, my good friend Andy Mitz.
All of the above at the same time, right? Like love and hate me, and to be honest, I thought I was told that I wasn't going to be on the show every week, but we'll see how long it is before I'm actually not here. So,
look, at some point, I'll tell you not to come on the show. We'll get there.
Exactly.
And Andy's best friend, and a guy everybody loves when he's here on the show. And I've literally had comments be like, bring him on more. And I go, I can only do so much with it because he does record 5 episodes a week of Boscoe Boys. He is our resident Kansas State friend and expert, Scott McFarland.
I'm always pumped to come on, and I will never tell you no unless things start going even worse, and then I'll say I'll come on, but I'm just not going to talk about K-State. So hopefully that doesn't happen anytime soon, but not feeling great about it, but I'm sure we'll touch on it later. But always happy to come on the flagship. So thank you for having me on, Phillip.
Always a pleasure to have you. Always a pleasure to have you. So our first segment of the show, of course, is in the rotation, in which we talk with a couple of people who we will have on a regular basis. We'll have some new people next week, but we're going to keep a nice tight group here to kind of talk about the Big 12 as a whole. And I want to start off specifically there talking about the conference as a whole before we dive into any specific games. Look, there's an argument to be made that it was a rough start to the season for the Big 12. The conference afforded any upset losses, which is a big deal. You don't want to have bad losses. Now, of course, TCU still playing North Carolina. Not sure how that one's going to go. Hey, the Big 12 did a good job against the spread, 9-6 at this point. That's better than expected amongst and against the other P4 competition. Like it's right there. It's one of the top 60 or 600%, 60%, one of the best percentages against the spread this weekend. So from that standpoint, and no bad losses, we're good. But the conference also missed out on, at this point, all their major opportunities to make a name for the conference or for a team to stand out. Cincinnati blows an opportunity against Nebraska. Colorado comes up short against Georgia Tech. Baylor's defense disappoints against Auburn. At this point, Utah and Devin Dampier are the best thing to happen to the Big 12 so far as versus non-conference, because again, we could talk about Farmageddon all day. It's a conference game. Non-conference matters in national perception. Utah and UCLA, but that game was so late. I know national podcasts talk about it, but they talk about it as at best like the 7th or 8th or 9th game that they get to after they talk about Florida State and Alabama and yada yada and your usuals. TCU has all the eyes on them right now. Maybe they can get a win against Bill Belichick in North Carolina. No idea what North Carolina is actually going to be this season. And so you come away from this weekend, and it's week 1. No team is who is today who they'll be in week 5 or week 8. But the losses still count as losses. And the Big 12 still has a lot of work to do to build up a reputation when we came into the season with really high expectations and high hopes for this conference. Scott, I'll let you go first here. Just how do you feel about the Big 12 as we sit here one game away from wrapping up week 1?
First off, I think South Dakota would beat UCLA. So as much as I would like to try to minimize anything Iowa State, they look absolutely scary. So even though Utah did get that, and I saw Utah get some national love, I do think the absolute work that Iowa State put on South Dakota was even more impressive than what Utah did. That said, I think the Big 12 is in a lot of trouble, right? And I hate, the national perception. I just want to watch Big 12 football and be entertained. But, that's not the question you asked me. I think the Big 12 is in a lot of trouble. They had what I think was the most important game when it comes to national perception, and it was that Auburn-Baylor game. Because, look, I think there's a chance that Auburn might be looking for a new head coach before Thanksgiving. I don't think Auburn is going to be any good at all. And Baylor showed that their defense, still massive issues. Some interesting decisions on game management throughout that game that, had you playing a little bit more catch up. And then again, one of everyone's favorite quarterbacks, Sawyer Robertson, he was not firing on all cylinders early, which then again put them in a situation where they weren't able to play into this big crowd and they couldn't maximize that opportunity. That coupled with Colorado losing to Georgia Tech, that one doesn't bother me at all. But again, it's a perception issue. As we're getting later into the season, there's going to be so much quality football being played in the Big 12, but they're going to look at it and be like, okay, well, like how good was this really? Baylor couldn't beat Auburn, and Georgia Tech ended up underachieving this, sweetheart status in the ACC. I think that is going to come back to haunt the conference, especially with Brett Gormark being so loud saying, hey, we're getting 2 teams in the playoff. I think that this week 1, I'm not going to say it buried the conference yet, but it is not good at all. And it's really unfortunate because they're right there, including Cincinnati right there to get one versus a Big Ten. It's not like any of these teams got blown out. But the fact you couldn't get any of them is really going to hurt the conference, depending on what TCU can do later. But again, North Carolina, maybe they'll go to a bowl, but it was just a lot of missed opportunities, some near opportunities.
Yeah, I think I'm going to disagree here.
Okay.
Mainly because I don't think there was very many opportunities anyway in week 1 for the Big 12 to be impressive. Like, yes, the Auburn loss, like the Baylor loss to Auburn hurts, especially if Baylor actually is as good as people think they're going to be this year and finish in the top 3 of the conference. But, I do think that, that was probably the only opportunity, and pretty much across the board, the Big 12, the entire point was don't get embarrassed. And I really think that Baylor's probably the only one that got embarrassed in their game. Just because of the way that they played against Auburn. Next week, I think, is where we really start to see how you're going to get evaluated against the rest of the country, because you have a lot of those big, Big 12 versus Big 10 or Big 12 versus SEC matchups on the schedule there. The other one that really kind of jumps out to me is like Baylor has a chance to put all this behind them when they play SMU. If they can get a win against SMU in week 2, we're going to look back on this. Oh, they had a crappy week 1. Oh, well, who cares? Like, especially if Baylor goes on to be really good. So I think yes, it was a missed opportunity to have like that clean sweep and to get those, but Cincinnati is not expected to be towards the top of the conference. So them losing to Nebraska, another, middle of the road Big Ten team, like that's not surprising to anybody. So like I look at this as yes, it was a missed opportunity to make a huge statement, but in the grand scheme of things, this week in and of itself doesn't really tell me that much about the Big 12. And I don't think they're going to be able to use it that much against them unless of course Auburn is like bottom of the SEC, Baylor's top of the Big 12. And there's no other like notable, notable results the rest of the non-conference.
See, in a perfect world, sure. But the narrative already began. Right, the narrative, the Big 12 was
started
already
before the year started.
Yeah, well,
right.
That's where I was going to say the narrative already started, but the fact that you weren't able to pick off any of these games Baylor I think ended up closing as favorites. I mean, it was like a point here or there, but the fact that you aren't able to pick off the Georgia Tech game, you're not able to pick off the Nebraska game. We'll see what happens. TCU, but TCU was favored in that would help. I think getting that win would help. But the problem is when you have that narrative begin before the season and now it's a runaway train. I mean, I heard it on national podcasts. You saw stuff on Twitter. Yeah, there's folks in the Big 12 corner that try to combat that narrative. But it's already out there and it's already rolling. So if the Big 12 doesn't have a clean sweep in week 2, if you aren't seeing TCU and Baylor both take care of SMU, if KU's not able to get out to Columbia and win that game, if you're not able to have Iowa State beat Iowa at home, all of a sudden the Big 12 could be buried this time next week, and it would be like, all right, hey, let's all just have fun watching the Big 12. Because the narrative's already done and dusted. So that's the position the Big 12 found itself in. It is for a national perspective, in a do or die moment for week 2 with no room for anything because you started taking those losses, even in games where it's teams we're not expecting, right? Cincinnati, hey, maybe they go to a bowl. But the fact that none of these teams were able to grab those games that they shouldn't have, I think it's just setting the table that if it's not a perfect week 2, the Big 12's buried when you want to talk about multiple bids.
I mean, I would say that because that was starting even after week 0, right? Like the whole talk about how the Big 12 doesn't have a legitimate college football playoff contender, that they're going to get the one, automatic, and there's not an at-large bid candidate or anything like all of these narratives were already there. The only thing I think the Big 12 didn't do this week in losing that Baylor game against Auburn was give a very clear, leave us alone because we're actually good. Yeah, it was a missed opportunity. I agree. But I just don't think that, I don't think that the results this week so far have given them any additional ammunition that they weren't already going to use.
Okay. Your general point is it's not worse than it was coming into the week because
right,
the Big 12 didn't get the wins. It
was already going to be this way no matter what.
And I think
unless
Scott
every single Big 12 team won by 30 points.
And I think Scott and I's point was you didn't take advantage of the opportunities to change the narrative or force the narrative in a different direction. So I think it's like two different ways of saying the same thing, right? You can slice your sandwiches in half, triangle or rectangle. It's still a PB&J, and it's still delicious. So moving on, let's talk about some of these games in particular. Colorado coming up just short against Georgia Tech. Despite Georgia Tech having 3 turnovers in their first 3 drives, Colorado starts the season with a loss. Tied at 20 in the fourth quarter, and Colorado had their chances. A positive takeaway for Colorado here. We have just talked and made jokes about how bad Colorado's run game has been during the Deion Sanders era. And it has been bad. I went through and looked at every game previously. There are multiple games in which their yards per rush average was a negative. Okay? Colorado averaged 4.7 yards per carry for 146 yards against Georgia Tech. That is just the 4th time of the Deion Sanders era where they averaged 4 yards or better per carry in a game. It's the best yards per carry average they've had against a P4 opponent. If I thought Caden Salter looked pretty good, their defense is okay, but if they can have a sound run game, Colorado, again, it would have been nice if they could have, just like last year, gotten the marquee non-conference win. There's no one else on their non-conference schedule that makes you go like, yeah, I do think that Georgia Tech should be solid this year. It's not a devastating loss. And I think you have to come away from at least feeling somewhat good, given that we had low expectations for Colorado, and maybe they'll be a lot better this year. But it's still disappointing. Time management, though. Good grief. Colorado didn't utilize their timeouts and allowed too many seconds to tick off the clock, which forced them into what was essentially two like Hail Mary attempts to try and tie the game at the end of the game. Poor clock management at the end of that game only made their attempt to tie the game and take it into overtime more difficult. I'll give them their credit, but I'm also going to ding them for where they made mistakes.
No, very accurate. Again, I come away from that. Again, I'm not a big Georgia Tech believer, but early on in that game, I was thinking to myself, "Oh man, like this could be a little statement. Could Colorado be better than I expected them to be?" Your call out for the running attack really is spot on. Again, 4.7. That isn't something that most schools would be throwing a parade for, but given what Colorado has been rushing the ball, that is big time. Again, Selter, 17 for 28, 5.7 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown. I think that they are going to be salty enough on defense that even given the, I don't want to say neutered, but not quite the explosive offense we saw last year, that's going to allow Colorado to be a bowl contention team. I thought there was a chance that, hey, maybe this Colorado team's only winning 4 games, maybe only 3 games. I was pretty low on them before this game, but I saw enough that thought, okay, it would not shock me if they ended up with 7 wins. I think there's some pieces there, especially if that defense can get a little bit better situationally. And then again, you pointed it out. How do you not have some nerd who plays NCAA football 24/7 on the sideline telling you when to use some timeouts? They definitely could have used some guy who's been playing the video game for the last 2 years saying, hey, this is when you need to call your timeouts. Would that have helped them? Would that have changed the game? Maybe, maybe not, but it would have given you a better shot.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, like, I don't know that Georgia Tech really kind of got stopped by Colorado. I think it was much more that they stopped themselves. I was honestly not that impressed with what Colorado did, but I wasn't expecting anything from Colorado this year. Like, they had so many wholesale changes that, this was very much like the first year that Deion was here, right? It's like, what's going to happen with this team? What are we actually going to get? It feels like a complete reset again for Colorado. And when it looked like they were going to put Georgia Tech away in this game before everything collapsed on them, this was very much like, hey, is this the same thing that we saw with them against TCU in the first game of, Deion's first season, where all of a sudden we get a huge shock and, they play a whole lot better. And then we come to find out they were just playing really hard, really high above what their expectations would be. I mean, you look at the end of this game and, Georgia Tech rushing for 320 yards on the night. I mean, that's just awful. That's, I don't know that this Colorado team is going to have what it takes. But again, I don't know that I really had any expectations for them. So while they did have a few opportunities, unfortunately, this was like not the team that I was expecting to be, carrying the torch for the Big 12.
No, look, no one's expecting Colorado to carry the torch of the Big 12, but you would like your teams in the middle and bottom to be better than the teams in the middle and bottom of the other Power 4 teams, because in the end, the conference as a whole, the conversations may be about Alabama or whoever finishes at the top of each conference, but the conference as a whole helps dictate which conferences are good or bad. And so you would like Colorado to say, hey, they only went 5-7, but they beat Georgia Tech. Hey, Cincinnati goes, we're going to talk about it in a second, Cincinnati goes 6-6, 7-5, but they beat Nebraska. And so, hey, the Big 12 has all these, as a conference, head-to-head wins over other Power 4 teams. that stuff does matter as far as the broad general public narrative goes. That's a thing you can sell. And so, again, I'm not expecting Colorado to carry the Big 12 flag and be the team that everyone cares about. But it's an overall standpoint. You're looking for anything you can to give yourself a leg up as a conference. It's just disappointing because Colorado had a shot.
They had a shot early in this one, but Georgia Tech, was picked 4th in the ACC coming into the year. So it's not like this is a middle of the road or, middle bottom team and Colorado missed a real chance. The expectation coming into this game was that Colorado was going to lose and they were going to lose big. And the fact
that definitely was not the expectation. The line was like, I think it closed at 2.5 or 3.
It was
okay. Well, I should say, okay. That's fair. I wasn't looking at the betting line, but just from the podcast that I listened to and from the previews that I looked at, I think a lot of people basically said that, hey, we don't know what to expect with Colorado, but Georgia Tech's going to be a good team this year. And they would have been much more surprised by an absolute drubbing from Georgia Tech on Colorado than one the other way around. And so that's fair to your point that the closing line was still pretty close. But it's just, you look at, someone who's expected to be 4th in the ACC with, teams like Clemson and Miami. And then you look at what Florida State's done. It's like the ACC, I don't think is going to be as bad of a conference this year as we're used to seeing the ACC. And Georgia Tech was picked pretty highly, there. So again, I think this is just a really bad, setup in terms of who the matchups are, where the opportunities actually are, and what we have highlighted as one of the quote-unquote major opportunities. I don't know that I personally ever thought it was a major opportunity for the Big 12 because I just didn't think that Colorado was going to be able to do it. The fact that they kept it as close as they did, I thought was fairly impressive for what I'm expecting from Colorado this year.
I'll wrap the Colorado conversation on this. The only thing I will quibble with you on specifically is major opportunity. It's not so much that I view this as a major opportunity. It's that every game where it's Big 12 versus P4 is an opportunity for the Big 12. And for the most part so far in non-conference, they have failed these tests outside of one game. So maybe 2 if TCU can find a way to win this game. All right, who's to blame for Cincinnati's close loss to Nebraska? Because Cincinnati was in this game. Absolutely in this game. And I said all off season, I like the roster. I don't like the coaching staff. So who is to blame when you're down 3, 34 seconds left, 1st and 10 at the Nebraska 33, and Brendan Sorsby throws a bad pass. It was a bad pass. But a pass you absolutely didn't have to have thrown in that situation. Do we blame Brendan Sorsby for the bad pass? Or do we blame Scott Satterfield and the coaching staff for a play call that was completely and totally unnecessary with the amount of time you had left on the clock, where you were, and an opportunity to, I understand you don't play for the tie, you play for the win. I get all those things. But you still play to give yourself a good opportunity to win. That was not the best opportunity to win. And again, Brendan Sorsby, poorly thrown pass. Had he given the game one tick second, he had a guy over the middle who could have caught that, he could have thrown to, was wide open, and could have run for days, maybe even made it all the way to the end zone. So Brendan Sorsby deserves some credit for how this game ended. But I also come back to, and again, it may be my bias because I don't like Scott Satterfield and I don't like the coaching staff. I want to ask you guys, because I know which way I lean. I'm trying to take my bias out of it. Who is to blame for Cincinnati's loss in this game?
I mean, look, I have the same bias you do. I think there are probably 5 or 6 coaching staffs that if you just put them with Cincinnati, they no doubt win that game versus Nebraska. And again, the players have to make the plays, and Sorsby made the wrong decision, made a bad throw. They were not, there wasn't a gun to his head say, hey, you have to chuck this right now. You can't take the sack. You can't do a check down. You can't throw the ball away. So he still made that call. But again, Cincinnati's roster is better than Nebraska's roster. With a better coaching staff, they win that one by 10 points. Even in that, road venue that was Arrowhead Stadium. So I truly believe that comes down to the coaching staff they've assembled. And I think if Cincinnati even if they go to a bowl game, even if they get to 7 wins, they have to make a change. And it's not just at the top. I don't think that there's really any coach who should be coaching at that level, at a Power 4 level on Cincinnati staff. They have to make a change because they have some players. They have the ability to be a team in the Big 12. And sadly, that was just more example, that entire game of, hey, they're going to underachieve this year with the roster they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is 90% on the coaches. I mean, you look at just the way the game had been going. Cincinnati rushed for 202 yards on the day. They passed for 69 yards. Like, at that point, you have to understand what has kept you in the game, what has given you success. Like I was saying, going into that final drive, you're going to run the ball a whole bunch. Maybe you throw in a surprise pass here and there, but it's got to be a safe throw to the sideline with no chance for an interception. And what do? You call, a throw basically in the middle of the field that Sorsby missed awfully there. But I mean, he had 96 yards rushing on his own. Like that was the perfect for like a bootleg, get a lead blocker out there, pick up some more yards, preserve the ability to tie the game, and look for a good opportunity to use the rushing game that's gotten you where you need to be to win the game for you instead. Instead, they put it, I mean, Sorsby I don't think he's a bad quarterback in terms of throwing, but his the strength of this team is definitely rushing. And especially against a team like Nebraska that, they have a really good secondary, a really good, passing defense. You've been gashing them in the run all night long. There is absolutely no reason to be throwing the ball there. And so, yeah, I mean, this is mostly on the coaching staff. I don't even I wasn't super impressed with Scott Satterfield hire. And I know that but I don't have a bias against them. I think that he had an opportunity, but I think it's pretty clear at this point that he's not meshing with the roster that they have. I don't even know that necessarily that his staff is meshing well, because it seems like there was, I was looking at the sideline during the broadcast. There was a lot more animated discussion than you usually see. Like it looked like there was disagreements in terms of what was being called or who was trying to do things. And, they will probably at some point come out with if something like that were to blow up, the whole, no, everything's fine. But just looking at the body language on the sideline, the way that this team conducted itself, it seemed like they just aren't meshing. And that is on the coaching staff, not on the players.
Cincinnati is now 2-9 in one-score games. That's games decided by 8 or fewer points under Scott Satterfield after this week's game. So just going to let you hang on to that one for a bit. Hang on to it for a little bit longer because we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
All right, quick run through of some of the games we just need to touch on real quick. Oklahoma State gets the 27-7 win over UT Martin, but lost starting quarterback Haas Haney to a broken bone in his foot, and he'll be out for a minimum of 5 weeks, and that feels generous. Good luck next week against Oregon. After an hours-long delay, UCF eked out a win over Jacksonville State, 17-10, in Scott Frost's second debut. That was, new quarterback Connor Wegman looked good, throwing 3 touchdowns in Houston's 27-0 win over Stephen F. Austin. Would have liked a little bit more, but Stephen F. Austin is a good FCS team this season, despite a storm delay, and the photos of it were absolutely incredible on Twitter if you haven't seen them yet. Texas Tech made UAPB look like a glorified scrimmage in their 67-7 season opening victory. Arizona State gets the 38-19 win over Northern Arizona behind 330 yards of total offense from quarterback Sam Levitt. It's 141 yards and 2 touchdowns on 12 receptions from Jordan Tyson. We talked about this one in our FCS preview. It's okay. I'm I'm not concerned. It's week 1. Iowa State showed no signs of jet lag on their 55-7 win over South Dakota. In fact, Rocco Beck completed his first 14 passes, finished 19 for 20 to set a school record 95% completion percentage. He also threw a touchdown pass for a program record 20th straight game. I apologize for all the doubts I had about Rocco Beck entering the season. Through 2 games, he is delivering so far for Iowa State.
Also,
Portland State,
forget they had a school record 63-yard field goal to close out the half. That was just it was all over the place.
That's incredible. Portland State 0, BYU 69. Nice. After a slow and sloppy start, including 3 first-half fumbles, West Virginia ran away from Robert Morris 45-3, with 393 yards on the ground in Rich Rod's second coming debut. And finally, in what could have been a competitive game, given the fact that Arizona did win their Week 0 game against Stanford, Arizona took care of Hawaii 40-6, with running back Quincy Craig running for 125 yards and a touchdown with an average of 17.9 yards per carry. He had a 50-something yarder in that game. So, fantastic. Like I said, no bad losses to start the season for the Big 12. Which leads us into the game we also have to talk about here. The one potentially bad loss that was avoided, Kansas State scare, Scott. Thank goodness for North Dakota's prevent defense, because watching the end of that game, I think that's what deserves a lot more credit for Kansas State being able to get their way down the field, because that prevent defense prevented nothing. Kansas State had their game-winning drive. Of course, North Dakota had a chance. They had their own opportunity to try and come back down and score, and it stalled out. Kansas State escapes with a very close win. Scott, you've done an incredible job. I've seen great response to your recap pod on Twitter from those who have listened, and I think many people found it very cathartic, and sometimes that's the best thing you can get after a loss is a good cathartic listen. I'm sure you've said a lot and would love to not have to say much more, but just any quick general takeaways other than, hey, y'all, go listen to Boscoe's voice.
No, I won't subject folks who don't want to listen to my ramblings for an hour. Look, there are some very real issues with this K-State team. Okay, wow, okay. You definitely don't want to listen to my ramblings. Point taken, Phillip. Thank you. So I think there's some very real issues. Look, if you want to go glass half full, you can say, all right, the team that loses in Ireland, they have some hangover games, and even teams that win, it's not always necessarily that first game, but it's going to happen at some point. So if you want to have a glass half full, it's like, all right, hey, that was the hangover game, and you found a way to win even when you should have. But I think that there are some legitimate issues, especially with the defense. Trying to switch from a 3-3-5 to a 4-2. It has not worked out so far. There's assignment issues. And again, maybe North Dakota does bounce back and they're a playoff contending team in the FCS, but they had a regime change. It was the first time head coach. They did some scheme changes themselves. And for really every quarter outside of the third quarter, they looked like the better team. And that is concerning, especially for Chris Kleiman teams where even as much angst as there's been around the defense the last few years, almost always a top 30 defense, right? If you throw out COVID, I believe top 30 defense every year that Joe Klanderman has been the DC. So when you're giving up 35, when Avery Johnson has to have heroics after failing. I had some folks get on me for being a little too easy on Avery Johnson. He failed the first game winning drive. We did not pick up a fourth down. You needed big stops and great clock management by Chris Kleiman to even get the ball back. But Avery Johnson, PFF, and I didn't know this until today. So after I recorded that episode, they graded him as 7 turnover-worthy plays in that game. He only had 14 all of last year on Pro Football Focus. He had 7, and North Dakota did not make him pay for any of those. So again, he had a little bit of Rocco Becht in him in the case of, hey, yeah, he should have had multiple turnovers, but by the grace of God and a lucky horseshoe up his ass, he didn't turn it over. So there are some concerns. There's lack of emotion. Again, I don't know what it is. And when you're about to play Army, a team that is going to triple option, yeah, they lost to Tarleton State, but Tarleton State's going to be a better FCS team than North Dakota. If you're going to have discipline issues, if you're going to have eye discipline issues on your defense, folks, look, I think the line was showing 17.5. I know you're doing your picks pod later in the week, Phillip, but I would do a stone cold lock of the century, every single cent you own on Army to cover that. I think K-State can win it, but they're not going to win by 18 if they don't have a lot of stuff figured out before Saturday, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I think that there are some very real issues in Manhattan, and it's going to come down to, can the leaders and can Chris Kleiman figure it out? You can scrap and claw to beat Army, find a way to win out in the desert on Friday. You have your first bye week, but I'm not convinced they're going to win the next two. And if you're dropping 2 games before that first bye week, things are going to get pretty dicey once Big 12 play resumes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to make any grand pronouncements about K-State this season. What was clear to me, though, in that game is that something just feels off, right? They are talented enough to be playing a lot better. You look at the way that they played, and especially in that third quarter, like you said, they should have won this game, honestly, by a good, 17 points or so. But they kept shooting themselves in the foot, it seemed like. It definitely seemed a lot more like they stopped themselves than North Dakota stopping them. And for whatever reason, they just let North Dakota at times run up and down the field like they own the place. I don't know what it is, but like you said, it's very clear that this Kansas State team, they're not on the same page. And it's surprising, given where they've been recently, how Chris Kleiman usually has his team performing. I don't know exactly what's going on, but they have to get something figured out because they are too good of a team for this to extend any longer if they actually want to have a shot at winning the Big 12 this year.
Definitely not what you expect from what I felt like was a program that had finally earned the reputation for being the most reliable team in the Big 12. Just the team you're like, look, they're going to win at least 8 games. Potentially they could get into the conference championship game. You just know what to expect. And every team has up and downs. It felt like as soon as I kind of pegged Kansas State as like, this is the only team that I trust. Everyone else has still had too much up and down. We got to figure out. Now, after 2 weeks, they've got a lot of things to figure out. Now, look, Army did lose to Tarleton State. I'm not going to pick Kansas State to lose to Army. But 18 points does seem like a lot to be favored by at this point. All right, we got a quick an ad break here, but real quick from both of you. We've kind of talked and teased around some of the games for week 2. There's some big ones on the schedule, so I'll get your opinions each. And as the rules have been forever, you can't pick your team. But what's the game you think is the most important for the Big 12's reputation in week 2, Scott?
I mean, you hate to double dip on it, but it's Baylor at SMU, right? That's a ranked road game, a team that was in the playoff last year. And then again, for Baylor, especially because they became the sexy pick to make it to Arlington to win the Big 12, that at least neutralizes what happened on your home field. You have to win that. And if Baylor doesn't, look, I know Shahan, he said that Baylor could have a playoff spot locked up before the end of September if everything goes right. Well, if everything goes wrong, again, they're not going to have any issue with Samford, but then all of a sudden they're looking at a game with Arizona State to start Big 12 play. If all of a sudden they find themselves sitting at 1-3 before they go down to Stillwater, I mean, who knows what the mental, makeup of that team is going to be. So I think that is the most important game, but I will throw a little love to Andy since he can't say it. The border war being back, my brother and his wife, they're going to the game. My brother got his graduate degree from KU. He's a KU football season ticket holder. I hope, and it's splitting the K-State fan base, so I'm only speaking for myself, but I hope KU goes in there and wins that one. I don't think Missouri's going to be any good, so I don't think that's going to do anything big for the Big 12. But if you want to talk about possibly sweeping it, taking out an ACC contender, if Iowa State can win El Assico at home, taking out a Big 10 team, and then KU going on the road to be an SEC team, we could be sitting here this time next week saying, hey, the narrative has been flipped on its head. So lots of big games in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because thinking about this, like, if Baylor loses this game to SMU, then as a fan of the Big 12, you almost hope that Baylor is just awful this year. And it turns out that, hey, we just, we thought that there was a good chance they could be good this year, and they're just not. Because what you don't want is then Baylor to lose all of those opportunities and then potentially, finish at the top of the conference, because then you've got real problems with the way that looks. So I do think in terms of trying to set themselves up, this is probably the most important game of any team on the schedule. Is Baylor has to do this, or else their season, for all intents and purposes, nationally is over. Which sucks. Like, just in terms of like being in that narrative, being talked about as one of the best teams, they could still make it to the CFP by winning the Big 12, but that would lose all respect for the Big 12. So I do think that that's probably the biggest one implication wise. I actually would say, though, in terms of the overall strength of the Big 12, probably this K-State Army game is probably even more important because, again, K-State's a team that is expected to be at the top of the Big 12. They had a good game an entertaining game against Iowa State over in Dublin. You thought maybe that they, do you make this North Dakota result a blip of, hey, we just weren't playing that well in this game for whatever reason, and we figure it out? Or if K-State also struggles, that's another team at the top of the Big 12 coming into the year that is having problems. And I think that would do a whole lot more to harm the Big 12, than anything that we saw this last week. And I know I'm not allowed to say it, but personally, it's always going to be Kansas, Missouri, no matter what. That's always the biggest game whenever it's on, just because, there's an actual war attached to it. So.
Fellas, appreciate your time as always. Don't forget, everybody, go listen to the Rock Chalk podcast and hear Andy's coverage of Kansas Jayhawks, and listen to Boscoe's Boys for Scott's coverage of Kansas State. Fellas, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. And, of course, we will have you back on throughout this season. Okay, before we get to our next segment, listen, folks, if you haven't already signed up for Battle Bets, now is the time to do it. It's okay. I know week 1 is done and you've missed the opportunity to join the 1012 League. It's okay. Shout out to WVU Chris in there for winning week 1. I'm going to be sending him a 1012 koozie and sticker because we're going to give out weekly prizes every single week to whoever has the best week. And of course, a grand prize at the end of the season. And so, look, it's not too late to join in. It is not too late to hop in to the Battle Bets League for the 1012 and have some fun with us here, y'all. Okay? It's not hard. You get to make bets on college football games, P4 college football games, every single week and spend fake money. You get like $3,000 to spend. Well, on whatever games you've got, you spend some on over-unders, you spend some on against the spread, you spend some on player props. So come have fun. This has been fun. I'm enjoying this. Like, if you have ever, I've always kind of wanted to see what betting's like and give it a shot, but I don't want to really spend any money. Great. This is free and fun to do. Now, listen, I'm sorry, it doesn't have an Android app yet. I know that's frustrating and hard. I've had a lot of people like, I would love to do that, but it doesn't work on Android. It will be next year. But for this year, first year of the app, they don't have it. But if you're on Apple and you've always wanted to give it a try, come join the 1012 League. Link is in the show notes. Link is out on Twitter. Link is out on Instagram. Email us at 1012podcast@gmail.com, or just go to your app and download Battle Bets. You can say that, hey, I'm here because of the 1012 podcast. You can find the 1012 Pod Fans League and go look for it, and I'm happy to have you come join us. You can create a league of your own with your friends just to have some fun. If you got some buddies you want to play around with this stuff with, it is a great time. It's a phenomenal app. Chase said it on the Picks Pod last week. It's ridiculous that no one has ever thought to do a betting site or app with fake money so that people can play and bet without actually having to risk anything. It's just for fun. It's a great thing. I hope you all come check it out. Again, links in the show notes. Download the app. Give it a shot. If you don't join our league but just want to play, make sure to note that the 1012 sent you. We'd appreciate it. And have some fun on battle bets this season.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
Speaking of Chase, always a pleasure to have my good friend Chase A Kiddy join us for our third segment here on the show. Chase, welcome back, bud.
Nice to be back on the East Coast. Ready to talk some football. What a week! What a weird weekend.
It was fun though. Like, I'm not going to overreact to week one and be like, we're in for a doozy of a season, because it's week one and things can change and shift. But it was a very interesting week one. General, you're going to have your up and your down teams. Your stock is rising and falling on based off of what you've been writing, what you'll be writing for BetMGM this season. You've got another point you want to get to as well. But just from the outcomes this weekend, what's your like primary takeaway? What's your brain thinking now that you've have a full week of college football action, essentially in the books minus one game?
I thought it was a pretty good weekend for the conference, was my takeaway. We are currently talking right now during the TCU UNC halftime, and TCU is pretty comfortably in control of this game. It has not gone well for North Carolina since the opening drive, so status quo there would indicate probably TCU's is looking pretty comfortable, at least for now. I thought a lot of the teams acquitted themselves really well this weekend. Colorado pretty much played Georgia Tech to a standstill and was just on the wrong end of it at the end of the game. I thought a lot of teams handled business more or less against FCS teams. The teams that did play FBS squads generally, like, I thought played pretty well, performed pretty well. So I just thought, it's easy to focus on the negative in week one, especially because a lot of teams play down in competition. And I thought overall I was pretty pleased from a Big 12 standpoint with what we saw. And I'll sort of nitpick a little bit later, but overall I was pretty happy with what I saw.
Yeah, it's the halftime for TCU UNC. TCU's up 20-7, as you noted. And since North Carolina opened the game with a touchdown drive, as our good friend Stato War Parker Fleming always says, that's a great start to the game. Now let's see the unscripted drives. After that, they on 5 follow drives. They had 1 interception and 15 total yards of offense.
Yeah.
So great start.
Old Freddie had 1 drive in him. He had 1 good script, it would appear.
Bill Belichick's just taking the check. Chase, after this weekend, what team are you up on in the Big 12?
Yeah, I picked Utah here because, first of all, they played a real team. Like, they went to UCLA, they played UCLA. So, road game against a power conference team, and you win pretty convincingly. It's UCLA. Let's not overreact. But like a lot of people play FCS teams this year. So if you go on the road and you beat a real team and you beat them convincingly, and you are Utah and you're trying to just turn the page on this awful 2024 season where everything went wrong, that's exactly what you want to see. You want to prove, hey, this is different and this is what it looks like when it's right. I thought they did that. I thought they made it clear, hey, we're going to be in the mix this year. Last year was a one-time thing. We're back to the Kyle Whittingham standard. So I thought Utah was the clear winner in terms of what they delivered and who they played. I thought they were in a class by themselves.
Yeah, look, I don't know that UCLA is going to be any good this season, but you went on the road to a Power 4 team and won 43-10. Like, that's not comfortable. That's a dominant victory.
Right.
Couple interesting stats from this one. Utah had 16 third down attempts in this game. 14 were third and short, so 4 yards or fewer in the game. They were 14 of 16 on third down, 12 of 14 on those third and shorts. Utah offense didn't do anything insanely crazy. They weren't throwing out, the kitchen sink. They just went out there and played some pretty simple offense and dominated UCLA with that. So Utah got to go out on the road, play their most difficult non-conference game, open the season, and bash a team's head in and reveal next to nothing of their playbook for the season with Devin Dampier. Oh, by the way, 48% offensive success rate for the Utes in this game. I know we don't want to overreact to week 1 games. And again, big asterisk, UCLA probably not very good this season. That's still impressive.
Yeah.
And something that we're going to have to keep an eye on with Utah moving forward. Okay.
And I'll add one more thing before we go to the next thing.
Yeah.
Dampier, huge jump in the Heisman odds, which is kind of, to your point, I would say a little bit of an overreaction, how much of the movement it was. But he's right up there now with Drew Aller and like sort of the immediate second level guys right there at 20-1, 25-1, kind of in that range. So I thought that was an interesting movement to jump him that far up into the mix, because that is in the mix.
I'm just going to note September 20th is the Big 12 opener for Utah when they host Texas Tech. Game day, big noon, whatever. That should be a pretty big and interesting game. All right, Chase, who are you down on after week 1?
If this wasn't a gimmick I was already committed to, I would just say nobody, because I really think that's the correct answer. I think even a team like UCF that had a pretty tough Thursday night game against Jacksonville State, I'm not even willing to say stock down there because the stock was already down. So I'm not downgrading UCF. We thought they would be bad. We thought 3 touchdowns was too much advantage to give. We talked about it last week when you're UCF and you've turned over as much as you have. So I don't even think that's the answer. To force an answer here for the gimmick, I'll say Baylor, because this was a team I had come around on as, hey, this team could win 10 or 11 games. This is a college football playoff team. This might even be a team that, missteps in the Big 12 title game and still gets one of the 12 playoff bids. I don't think that's crazy. So to lose to Auburn, I think you probably downgrade them off that mark a little bit. But I still think they're right there in the conference picture with a lot of other teams. And this kind of goes back to when we talked about win totals in the offseason. I said I'm more interested in Baylor as a conference future than a win total because of what the schedule looks like. You might lose a few games there, but the top end is still going to pay well if they deliver on what the talent is and the momentum that they generated over the second half of last season. So Baylor's sort of my nominal answer here, but I don't think I want to swing the bat too hard there.
I think I'm selling more stock than you are, Baylor, but I think I was also higher on Baylor.
Yeah, I was going to say you had more stock to begin with.
I had a lot more stock in Baylor. And look, the big question mark for Baylor coming into the year was the secondary, and I can't comment on the secondary because they didn't get tested. The rest of the defense did, and it came away wanting. They could not stop the Auburn rushing attack. Like Auburn was just like, all right, we're just going to run the ball. Yes, the refs are bad. Let's get out of the way. The refs looked like they were also playing in week 1. They had some absolutely atrocious moments. They're not the reason Auburn ran for 307 yards at 5.9 yards per clip. Okay, that would be the absolutely atrocious tackling. Anytime I have major question marks about a coaching staff when you see a team come out and completely forget or not know how to tackle. And not like, oh, well, they just were like arm tackling nonsense. Okay. Worse though, Jackson Arnold is a rushing quarterback, not a passing quarterback. You let him run for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he would just find the gap and be like, bye. It was, at a certain point, it's like, you know exactly what they're going to do. You know exactly what they're going to do. Baylor's defense was set up to keep Jackson Arnold from passing. They set the defense up. They're like, no, we're not going to let you throw to these dynamic wide receivers. We're going to make you run. Okay, well, when it showed that they were just going to keep running successfully, and you kind of seem to stick with that game plan, that's not ideal. All right, I'm going to give the positive takeaway here. Yes, look, we question Baylor's skill players. They fixed the wide receiver problem. I think they're very good. Cole Wilson from Texas State was fantastic. The Baylor had seven completions of 20 yards or more. And they lost by multiple touchdowns. Because you got inside, or two were inside the Auburn 25 times and came away with 17 points. And Clay had it in 14 when you made it inside their 11 4 times. Like, it's just the defense here. That's your head coach is a defensive guy. I like Dave Aranda. That's not good.
Do you think it's a case where, hey, it's Dave Aranda, he's a defensive guy, you trust that he's going to get it fixed before conference play starts? Or is it, hey, you're a defensive guy, this should have been more buttoned up to begin with?
This should have been more buttoned up to begin with.
Right.
Because he's been trying to have his hands on it more. And it's, since their Big 12 title game, the defense, I like Aranda. And he's been willing to like change and admit mistakes and fix things throughout his time at Baylor. But outside of 1 year where he just made it click because he had some absolutely phenomenal talent there, especially on the defensive line, like that defense has not lived up to that remotely. Like you thought, okay, Baylor's calling card is going to be just absolutely great defense, and it has not been. And so, like, if that's what the defensive line and linebackers are going to look like when we still have major questions about the secondary, Baylor may have to win some games in the old style of Texas Tech of like in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I like Sawyer Robertson a lot. I don't trust him to play a clean enough game to consistently get you every week to get you enough wins in the 50s and 60s that you're going to be there in Arlington. Like you could probably still make a bowl game, but I have to sell quite a bit of my Baylor stock after what I saw. It's week 1. They're not a complete team yet. I'm not going to pretend like they are, but I have some major concerns that at a certain point in that game, the fact that you still couldn't stop the run game. Oh, you have a special teams touchdown is a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing you wanted to touch on while we were here. Overreacting to FCS results. Hit us, Chase.
Yeah, so look, I think half the conference played FCS teams, and it's always fun to see what people make of FCS results because, like, I've talked to a lot of coaches over the years. You talk to 10 coaches, you're going to get 6 different approaches to FCS games. Some of them want to use it as, I just want to try things in a sandbox. Some of it want to use it as, let me build some equity with the fan base and beat the living crap out of this team so that the next couple tough results, I can point back to us scoring 65 points on Sacred Heart. Some of them want to use it in the era of the transfer portal to get as many players on the field as possible so people can feel like, hey, I remember when I got playing time, this time and this time and this time, right? You just get as many names and bodies on the field as possible. Some want to use it as a way to test quarterbacks. It's all over the place. So it's really hard to judge the FCS results when you don't know what the goals are for that game in the first place. And so I think this is the week, and I just mean broadly the week where your team plays an FCS team, where you get the most out of left field or incorrectly rooted takes because you don't know what the team was trying to do in the first place. TCU just scored again. So, with that in mind, I wrote down a few questions based on the FCS results we got. We can overreact to some FCS results. Question number 1, does Kansas State actually just kind of suck?
I don't know. No, they don't suck. I need another week before I have efficient data.
Okay. For the record, my answer is no. I think I think the losing team coming back from Ireland pretty much every year has a rough go of it. I got to UND plus the points late, but I did get there. It was one of my only winners from this weekend. That terrible weekend gambling. We can talk about that Wednesday.
Double check this stat, but I saw somebody mention that like the team who loses Ireland never goes to a bowl game.
Ooh, I will look at that.
I have no way to confirm that, but that's an interesting one. Oh, by the way, in TCU's touchdown, again, you all know what happened. First play of the third quarter, 75-yard touchdown.
Yep. Have we seen the last great Mike Gundy Oklahoma State offense?
Yes.
Kind of think so, too.
It would have been better had Haas Haney not gotten a broken bone in his foot, because he probably was a better fit for what is another offensive line than St. Flor's. So, yeah.
Question from the first half of the West Virginia Robert Morris game. Is this team going to lose to Ohio next week?
I'm not going to pick them to cover.
Question from the second half of the West Virginia Robert Morris game. Is this team a threat to win the Big 12?
I'm not going to put money on it.
I think really just the point there is I'm guessing not a lot of people watched that game. That game was pretty close at halftime. It was
very close at halftime.
The vibes were rough in Morgantown at halftime. Okay, thank God you're no longer allowed to go back to P-Lot and then re-enter, because
a lot of people would have three
not
fumbles in the first half. Like, you're not going to score a lot of points.
P-Lot. I just my JMU and my West Virginia lingo there just intermixed. Blue Lot. Sorry, P-Lot's in Harrisonburg. But look, they did. I thought Nico looked good, and I thought the second half, obviously, they got some of the offensive stuff figured out. But boy, that offensive line, I don't know. Let's get to maybe the one that probably matters the most out of all of this. BYU and Texas Tech scored 136 points. We're going to see a BYU Texas Tech Big 12 championship game this year.
Not ready to go there yet.
Do you think one of those teams will make the Big 12 championship game?
Yes.
Yeah. I know which one too.
Yeah.
I think we've already been there and talked about that. Yeah. It's FCS. Nobody freak out. Especially you Kansas State fans.
No.
Take a cold shower. It's going to be okay. UND's pretty good. I think UT Martin's pretty good.
They are. UT Martin is like receiving votes. North Dakota. You don't get confused with North Dakota State, South Dakota State, South Dakota. North Dakota's.
Oh, those Hawks fans! They'll come after you, man.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all itching to listen to a Big 12 podcast. Chase, as always, it's a pleasure, man, and we will talk to you again. Our picks pod this week drops on Thursday. Don't ask me who our guest picker is yet, because I don't actually know the answer to that question. But we'll have one.
See you Wednesday.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Life gets easier with great assists, and State Farm is here to dish one your way. Get in touch over the phone or on the app to get the teammate you need. State Farm with the assist. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability and eligibility vary by state.
All right, we wrap this show up typically by looking at the games coming up. We're going to do that real quick because I also have an interview with the owner and creator of Position Picks. If you haven't set up a league in that, you should. It's a ton of fun. I'm going to answer the question that I asked Scott and Andy of what is the most important game for the Big 12 this weekend. And there's two games I lean towards. I'm gonna go with Elastico. I'm gonna go with Iowa State versus Iowa. Iowa State, after the way they've started the season, and no one spent a lot of time on their win on Saturday, but the way people talked about it very quickly was that was impressive. That was impressive. That was impressive. And so Iowa State has a lot of eyes on them. By the way, remember, they made the Big 12 title game last year. Like, this is an Iowa State team that the way the Big 12 has to handle things, you would like to see some teams stay towards the top or show some consistency. And so if you can get a good season from Iowa State and Arizona State, even if they don't make the Big 12 title game, maybe both don't or neither of them does, but at least if they can be a good top 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12 this season, that's going to help the Big 12 season overall. So Iowa State playing Iowa, classic game. Fox's big noon kickoff is going to be there. It's 11 a.m. kickoff. Like, it's a big game for Iowa State. We know this game gets ugly. I'm really curious what they look like. I think it's a huge game for Iowa State to be able to win this one this year again. The other one is the team I just mentioned, Arizona State at Mississippi State. And Mississippi State, I mean, they played better than I expected against Southern Miss. I don't know what to expect from Mississippi State this season. They might be good. They might not have to go to a bowl game. But it's still a big game for Arizona State to go on the road to Mississippi State and get a win. These are the opportunities. We can talk about Kansas and Missouri. That one's a good one. Baylor at SMU. That only matters really if Baylor decides to go on some like 8-1 stretch through the Big 12. And yeah, but they could beat Auburn or SMU. OSU's going to Oregon. That's going to be ugly. BYU's got Stanford. They should beat them handily. I mean, those are the games this weekend for the Big 12. But I think Arizona State at Mississippi State and Iowa State versus Iowa are by far the 2 biggest games for the Big 12 this coming weekend. So, of course, we'll be back on Thursday to make picks. But coming up next, stick around. Fantastic interview. Learn more about why you should set up a league in position picks today. If you listen to the show before, you know I love finding new things to get excited about, new things to mess around with, to add to the network or to our coverage of the Big 12 and just add some different layers. And I've always really liked fantasy football. And I love the concept of college fantasy football. I actually played in a league one year with people we've had on this show before. But now college fantasy football, it's not very big, so there's not a lot out there. And so when I found out about and kind of got approached about this new program called Position Picks, this was like college fantasy football, but a little bit different. I got real excited. I'm in a league. We started a Big 12 league. Got some of the voices you hear on this show on a regular basis in there. So I wanted to give the creator of this an opportunity to come on and kind of introduce Position Picks to you. Bowman Bagley, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, Position Picks started with, just like you said, I love college football, love fantasy football, never really found a good source for the college game. And the reasons are pretty obvious. There's 70,000 plus student athletes. It's hard to keep track of them all. In this era of NIL deals, they're switching schools every other year. So your favorite stars are just going all over the place. There's injuries. There's schools that refuse to release the depth chart. So you don't actually know who's going to be playing until maybe that very first week of the season. And so it's so hard to really dive deep into college fantasy football unless you are just 100% committed. And most people love college football, but can't spend that much time. So we created Position Picks. Now, the format of the game is we try to simplify it as much as possible. So instead of picking specific people, you pick position groups. So we kind of lump a lot of people into one pick. So you pick quarterbacks, rushing, receiving, defense and special teams, and kicking. And so, for example, last year in the beta that we ran, we just made an Excel sheet with a bunch of friends, created the game style, and I picked Utah quarterbacks. Well, Cam Rising got pushed into a Gatorade cooler, got injured. Wilson came in, kind of played subpar, got injured. By the end of the season, they had played, I think, 6 different quarterbacks. And it was nice because I was still getting points for whoever was playing quarterback. Even though they didn't play well, I was still getting points. And so it's really all about simplifying the game and allowing really anybody to jump on and play and have fun.
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, I'm in 2 leagues. I'm actually adminning our 10-12 Big 12 league. It's got you are in there, I am in there. We've got Water Right Nighty Light, Tortillas and Takes, Andy Metz of our Kansas show are in there, and some other listeners from the show as well have hopped in. And so we're having fun with this. I just drafted BYU's kick It's just kick. So you do quarterback, rushing, receiving, defense, and kicking. And so I got BYU's kickers to go with. I've got Baylor's defense, Arizona State's receivers, Kansas State's rushing attack, Arizona's quarterbacks. I like this from a standpoint of like fantasy football works at the NFL level because you can have, especially like from a dynasty standpoint, you can have players forever. But you're right, like college, it changes so drastically. Like you have to just do it as a redraft each year, unless you're doing Devy, which is a whole other thing. And I've done one before, and it's fun and it's interesting. But I like this, and I like that you could do it from groups because, as you said, like you lose your quarterback in a league where you're picking players, that may have ruined your entire season. Like season's over. In this case, not necessarily. It's interesting to look at things because you say like, hey, you may have the receiving unit that's got the best receiver in the Big 12. Doesn't mean it's the best receiving unit in the Big 12. So it does also change the way you think about things. And I'll tell you this, we've the chat in there because there's a chat feature. And we also have a Twitter DM that we're kind of messaging everybody on. It's been really fun to be engaged and talk about this stuff. And we've got a good engaged individuals. And so like I'm very much enjoying this. I'm excited for the finish this draft and first season getting underway. What's some of the responses you've gotten about position picks so far since you guys launched this thing?
I mean, aside from all the glitches that we're fixing and the bugs that come with a brand new game, first off, I appreciate everybody's patience. We've done over, I think we're close to 3,500 draft picks have been completed so far. And it's pretty much all organic traffic, word of mouth, people creating leagues, inviting their friends. It's so fun to log into the admin page and see one person sign up and then see 4 more people with the same last name kind of joining that league. Just families coming together, friend groups. So it's been a really positive experience so far. And like you said, on the group that we're in together, I love that we narrowed it down to just Big 12 picks. Like that's the league that all of us really know the most because we're kind of associated with those teams more. And so we narrowed it down. So we're only picking from the Big 12.
We've got CUSA to make sure we have enough units for everybody.
Yeah, we have a few too many people, so we threw in a minor league in there. But for the most part, everyone's drafting from the Big 12, so it really keeps us engaged in the conferences that we really care about and weeds out some of the other conferences that we don't care about. And it's all been positive feedback so far. It's being adopted really quickly. We're investing in making the app right now. So right now it's just the web browser. So we went ahead and pulled the trigger and we're building out the app to make it a little more user friendly. And we have so many people have come to us with fun ideas. Like I think it was our group that talked about the Sickos League, where hey, let's make a league where you can change the settings, where we look at we only want to get points for sacks and missed field goals and just sicko things. And we can create any of those types of things. If there's stats for it, we can play it. And but it's been really fun so far.
I do think, you mentioned that. And look, as you mentioned, this is like year one. So first gen of anything, everyone understand, like have some grace. Like if there's something you don't like, you guys have been really receptive to anybody, especially on Twitter, which isn't always the best place to be receptive to people offering thoughts and advice and opinions and things they liked or didn't like. And I think as long as people got to go into this kind of like, I'm going to have fun with this and understand that it's a new thing. It's fun to get started. It's going to continue to develop and build. And I love the concept of like, hey, we're going to introduce Sickos League next year of you can customize down into how you feel the points. Like absolutely. Yes. If that's a thing next year, I can tell you right now, I'm going to get as many people as we can and host the biggest, weirdest, most sickos college football position pick league we possibly can. And there will be points for roughing the punter and roughing the kicker, because of course there will, because we love kickers and it's fun to do those kinds of things. Look, just personal experience. This thing's fun. And I also love, like, look, I am in like 3 dynasty leagues in football. I'm in some redraft leagues, and draft time is always fun. They always feels like there's so much work during the season to be like being really committed of like, oh, I gotta check the waivers and I gotta get this running. I gotta find the backup and stuff. And so I kind of like also the idea with as much college football stuff as I have going on, having a league that feels a little bit not easier, but a little more like, I don't feel like I have to be like, okay, who's the backup running back? I need to go see if I can go get him because so-and-so just went. I didn't. So no, it's okay because you are still covered. Like it's okay that BYU's quarterback is gone. It's okay that Utah has to go to their backup kicker. You're not like
you're not screwed.
I have to go find somebody in my position. You're okay. It's a fun thing that I've enjoyed so far. What are some of the questions you guys feel like you've heard the most from people who've either hopped in the app or are curious about the app that you guys have seen the most so far?
Yeah, one of the things we implemented was, a lot of people are asking about waivers, and so what we did is, if all of your positions have a bye on the like overlapping buys, you can borrow a player from the existing pool. So you don't have to worry about waivers or being in line or when it's your turn to pick up somebody. Another question we got is related to timing for the draft. And so we're going to implement something where you can actually, if you have a close group of friends and you want to just crank out a draft, you can put more strict time limits. Little changes like that, kicking out people that aren't responsive. So some pretty minor tweaks, but the overall gameplay, I think everyone's being very responsive. It does take a certain level of stress off your life. We're competing for people's time, right? Everybody has a certain amount of time in the day, and we're trying to come in and say, hey, add one more game to your life. Come play one more league, right? And so we want it to be engaging and social and fun, but we do want it to be simple. And what we love about college football is the chaos, right? Like last year, FSU is the perfect example and will be for all history. Projected like number one team, in our beta, like people were drafting them. It's like, yes, they're going to be amazing. And they were like the absolute worst team in college football. And so, we live for this chaos. And, some people are, one of the comments was about auto picks. If you get skipped because you don't pick in time, how do we kind of prioritize who gets picked on that? And so we're working through that. But, someone got auto picked, Kansas quarterbacks, and then Kansas plays their first game and it's like, oh, they're actually looking pretty decent this year. That might have been a decent pick. Whereas nobody would have projected that a week and a half ago before they even played. And so, the pure chaos of college football, this really helps keep you covered. And we try to take the stress out, make it fun, make it social, and keep everybody engaged and really give you a platform for college fantasy football.
I appreciate that on social you guys continually post updates on which school has had the most units drafted. BYU's been number one for quite a while. We've seen Arizona State in that list, Baylor in that list. What's the update right now? Like where does the Big 12's been really good. I don't know if it's just like we've brought some people to it. Big 12 fans just found it. I know you have to stay unbiased. I know you're a BYU guy, so I don't know but it has been interesting to see quite a bit of Big 12 being popular picks inside of this app so far.
It's been awesome. I graduated from BYU and Utah. I primarily primarily bleed blue, but I'll support Utah. So, my community, I had a lot of BYU fans in my community, and they all just jumped on and very supportive right off the bat. But what's interesting is most of them are picking the BYU defense and kickers. A lot of they're picking, we'll say the Baylor rushing, or they're picking, Alabama or Arizona State or something else first, but then they're consistently picking the defense and the kicking team. So that's giving them a lot of picks. But the Big 12, there's quite a few kind of Big 12 focused leagues that are out there now. And there's the current standings right now. BYU is up there, Baylor, Arizona State. There's a lot of hope for ASU quarterbacks. A lot of people are picking Baylor rushing. But outside that, you get the typical SEC groups. But when you look at the data from last year, and one of the things we just recently launched is you can look at all the historical data, 2023, 2024, any school, any conference. And it's on the website for free for anybody. And, the number one schools, they're not SEC schools. It's like Eastern Washington or these types of random schools that generate the most points. So, just because you're this powerhouse that's going to win all the games, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to generate the most points. And that's just adds to that kind of chaos of college football that we love.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's funny in the league that we're drafting. all the BYU positions are now taken, and all the Iowa State positions are now taken. Now, granted, Wyatt Knighty Light's in here as well. And there's most of Kansas, most of Kansas State, most of Texas Tech. And look, I am big on, like, I'm having a Big 12 team at every position. I will also be having some CUSA on there because there's some opportunities for those position groups to put up points. Just because they're not playing the same level of competition as the Big 12 doesn't mean they're not going to put up numbers. And I'm all about wins and
yards
numbers.
are yards.
So,
yeah.
Doesn't matter who's getting them. Okay, who's catching the ball, who's running. They're gonna hit the end zone. That's good for my team. Bowman, I appreciate your time today, man. This is great. Everybody, it doesn't matter if you're like, hey, week 1's already over. It's fine. Right? It doesn't matter if they hop in week 2, if they hop in week 3. Whenever they feel like hopping into position picks, getting some friends together, starting a draft. I mean, you can have a league as little as few as 4 people.
Yep.
So if just you and some close friends want to do one day just to try it out, go for it. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll have fun. Like I said, the draft's kind of cool. Everyone I brought in has been like, this is different. Okay, now I get it. No, I like this. This is neat. This leads to different conversations. It's a different way of looking at the sport. So I know we'll say that we'll have the link down in the show notes here of the episode, but where can everybody go and learn more about position picks, and where can they go and join the fun this season?
Yeah, go to www.positionpicks.com, or you can follow us on X, positionpicksff. I'm active every day, so shoot me a message directly. I'll respond to you really quickly. I'm working to build this community, and I just have been so humbled by the support from everybody. And again, shoot me feedback, and that we'll work to incorporate and fix and continue to build this together. And we're working on a basketball version and a baseball version, and we're going to make this a year-round app where you're just continually involved with college sports and building this community. So we're really appreciative of the initial support, and hopefully we can live up to your expectations.
All right, I'll end on my last request. College softball.
College softball. If there's data, we can build it.
I'll DM you after. I'll show you where it is.
Awesome. I got a request for college curling or fencing and all sorts of. There's a lot of fun sports out there where it's like, hey, we could probably tweak something and come up with something. But we can do softball.
How do you could do wrestling and have pick for each weight?
If there's data, we can build something. So
all right, we're gonna chat. If any of you got out there like, hey, you know what my favorite college sport is? I want some cross country or whatever. At Position Picks FF on Twitter, great way to reach out to them, or just go download or go check out the site, set up a league. There is opportunities there for contact, so just go give it a try. You guys, I think you're going to really like this. I think it's a ton of fun. I'll be up to pick again soon. Oh yeah, we got to go auto pick our accidental sign up. Which CUSA, we'll figure it out. All right, Bowman, again, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you, and can't wait to see what else you guys come up with.
Thank you. Appreciate your support.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power and advanced Audi tech, the next chapter of Audi is here.